Welcome, everyone, to the second lecture of our second series of webinars of the section of evolutionary psychiatry at the World Psychiatric Association. I'm Riyad Abid, chairman of the section. Our speaker today is Dr. C.A. Soper, who'd like to be called Cas. Cas is a psychotherapist and independent researcher based in Lisbon, Portugal. He has degrees from the universities of Cambridge and London and earned his Ph.D. with a thesis titled Towards Solving the Evolutionary Puzzle of Suicide. This was adapted into a textbook, The Evolution of Suicide, which was published by Springer in 2018. This was followed by the publication of a more accessible book, The Evolution of Life Worth Living, Why We Choose to Live, as well as several articles and chapters on a similar theme. Cas has spoken at one of our scientific meetings at the Evolutionary Psychiatry Special Interest Group at the Royal College of Psychiatrists in London in 2018, and has contributed a great chapter to this volume that I would highly recommend people who are interested in evolution and psychiatry to have a look at, and to look at Cas's chapter that he's co-authored there. Also, importantly, he will be speaking at the forthcoming EPSIG, that's to say the Evolutionary Psychiatry Special Interest Group, which is holding a face-to-face symposium that will take place in London at the Royal College of Psychiatrists on the 10th of March, and registration is open for that symposium. So you would be able to meet him in person. I've been following Cas's work on the evolutionary roots of suicide for some years, and I can say without hesitation that, in my opinion, he is the foremost evolutionary theorist on suicide in the world today. And I believe his published works should be widely and carefully read by clinicians, researchers, and policymakers. Cas has changed the title of his talk at the last minute to a rather enigmatic Struggle for Existence. Anyone? So, over to you, Cas.
Thank you. Thank you, Riyad. Can you, I'm sharing my screen here. I'm hoping you can see me, but I can't see you. Are you all still there?
We can see you, and we can see the slide.
And you're excellent, right? So I'm not just talking to myself. That's great. And thank you all for attending. What a great crowd. Yes, so I'm just trying with a lighter title. This talk is called "Struggle for Existence." Anyone? Said in the tone of voice as if it's an invitation to tennis. Now, hopefully. There we go. So hopefully I've arranged these screens so the slides then look, they show my thoughts in action. There we go. And so here is a genuine magnetic imaging scan of my brain trying to think about suicide. It's difficult, right? So my mind redacts itself. There's a self-censorship that goes on, even though I against my will. This is just a difficult subject to think about and to talk about. I mean, this is not an arena that many of us often willingly step into. And I'm sure this isn't just me. I mean, this is a universal reticence, and it affects us being humans. It affects the research community as well. So Thomas Joyner writes about this in his book, one of his books, that the awkwardness that comes with this topic sets up a systemic resistance in the research and academic community, amongst other communities. I mean, every research topic has its own problems, but there's something special about suicide that adds to the difficulties of obtaining funding. There are fewer. It affects the the people who make decisions about teaching courses. It affects publishers. Publishing about suicide is a can of worms with guidelines on responsible reporting, rightly so. But it just means that this is an awkward subject to research, and most of all, it is not the kind of topic that is conducive to the kind of casual conversations that go on around water coolers and dinner parties and down the pub. So this whole impetus for research ideas, for sparking new ideas, is difficult to get going. I mean, this isn't a hi Mary, good to see you. I was just thinking, I was just thinking about suicide this morning, and I wondered if it was relevant to your research topic. It isn't going to happen. So the result of which this whole topic is sort of lost in this fog. And I invested a PhD peering into this fog and decided that it was actually within the fog is an elephant in the room. The elephant in the room in that here is a subject that we all know exists, but none of us particularly want to acknowledge, and certainly we don't want to talk to each other about it. And it is a friendly elephant, so he's here for our protection, and he's saying, really, you don't want to go here. Why don't you think about something else? And that is good advice. So I admire your courage for joining. Thank you for joining me. It takes some courage to get involved in topics like this. So the elephant in the room has always been here for generations of researchers, and I think it even affected the great Charles Darwin. Who was mute about it. I mean, he remarkably, for such a fearless thinker, he didn't touch on this. And that is surprising, especially as suicide could be taken as a direct challenge to his theory. I mean, he would say that no trait will evolve by natural selection that is destructive to the individual. Well, here's one. It's hard to think of a trait that is more destructive. So come on then, Charles, explain how this species has acquired a universal trait of killing itself. And on that, he's mute, as indeed is his inspiration, Thomas Malthus. So as you'll be aware, Darwin built on Malthus's idea of the constraints on populations. I asked, Alexa, show me Charles Darwin standing on Thomas Malthus's shoulders. There we are. Look at that. Darwin built on Malthus's famous essay on the principle of population, and he pointed out the unpleasant reality that populations grow exponentially. Unfortunately, their food supplies don't. So inevitably, sooner or later, a crunch point is reached, this Malthusian catastrophe, at which this dystopian stage, after which the size of the population is then controlled by causes of premature death, specifically disease, famine, and war. And Darwin's insight was to realize that this is this situation, these external controls apply to universally in the natural world. But also it is paradoxically the death and destruction that goes on at this crunch point is not entirely destructive over an evolutionary timescale. It has a creative effect. Because for every generation is shaped by the survivors of the destruction that went before. So in any population of organisms, of the vast of any species, of the vast numbers that are born into this world, only few will survive, even fewer will reproduce, and any heritable trait that gives an individual an advantage in the struggle for survival to survive and reproduce will, or rather gives their offspring an advantage in the struggle to survive and reproduce, will spread across the whole population. And Darwin expressed this, yes, well, this is the origin of the origin of species, his great book on the origin of species by means of natural selection. And it's important alternative title on the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. So if you accept the theory of natural selection, which I'm sure we all do here, then we also have to accept its premise that Darwinian theory is based on life being a struggle. Darwin explains this in, and he explains this in Malthusian terms. He says, thus, from the war of nature, from famine and death, the most exalted object of which we are capable of conceiving, namely the production of the higher animals, directly follows. Now, the production of the higher animals, that's us he's talking about, that includes us. So we too are the products of war, of famine, and death. Now, if that sounds grim, modern evolutionists would say that Darwin barely scratched the surface of the extent of the war zone that is going on around us. So here's David Buss's excellent article, Great Struggles for Life. Struggles in the plural, note. And Buss points out that Darwin clocked three of the main three primary arenas of war, the struggle for existence that plays out us against the conditions of life, the physical environment, us against other species, predators, prey, parasites, and pathogens, and we're struggling against each other. Specifically, we are battling it out over our life partners. Men are fighting amongst men, the women fighting amongst women. The females then have to struggle to attract a mate. The males have to do the same, while both sides trying to make sure that they are struggling to maintain attractiveness to each other. When a family appears on the scene, there's another set of battles going on, conflicts between parents and their offspring, battles between siblings, and if there's a step family involved, then there's a whole another can of worms. And even in our most intimate relationships, can be there's an ongoing struggle, an ongoing battle. The sexual relations entail, the evolutionary theory would give us to believe, I'm sure it is true, there is an impetus for deception between the sexes, and where it serves the interests of reproductive success, coercion, rape. Now, going back to the question that I began this presentation with, struggle for existence. Anyone want to join me for a bit of a struggle? Because we all intuitively know how to play the game, how to put up a good fight. We just have to follow the right algorithms of game theory and inclusive fitness. So, for example, you'll be trying to manipulate me into owing you favors with reciprocal altruism. Gifts come with strings attached, and so there's no such thing as a free gift in this world. And of course, you'll then need to be alert in case I renege on the deal. Cheater, that you need to be careful that in case I don't repay the gift with interest, and then I can retaliate. I can respond then by honing my skills of what Don Campbell calls sincere hypocrisy. So if I can convince myself that I'm being kind, it's easier for me to convince you. But actually, I just want to get one over on you. So these are the evolutionary rules of the game. Who wants to join me in a struggle for existence? Well, if I was, say, a chimpanzee with sufficient brains to realize what was being on offer here, what was being proposed, I wouldn't be in too much of a hurry to join the fray. If I was a bright chimpanzee, I'd say, hang on a minute, hold up, I have some concerns. First of all, this being a struggle, it's going to hurt, right? Randy Ness's excellent book, it shows us that there are many good reasons for bad feelings. But, says the chimp, you know what? I don't want bad feelings. And what are these good reasons? Good for whom precisely? I mean, they may be good from the perspective of some genetic algorithm going on out there, but what's in it for me? I mean, all I see is pain and suffering on the table. And anyway, the whole thing looks, well, it is futile for the individual. Even if, however hard a struggle I put up, however good a fight, I'm still going to die, and it won't be pleasant. And even if I fight my way to the top of the tree and be top dog, it's just a matter of time before I get my throat ripped out by my successor. And even to win is to lose. I mean, even if I put up such a fight that I populate the rest of the world with my own offspring, that doesn't mean the war is over. This is the ultimate frozen conflict. The war just carries on. Only now it carries on amongst my own descendants, my own children and grandchildren fighting it out amongst themselves. So a chimp would logically, reasonably say, facing this facing the reality of the proposal, would say, I'll give it a miss. You feel free, do carry on, but thanks, but no thanks. But of course, nobody's asking the chimp. The chimp is the chimp's consent is not required or sought, and I'm sure Darwin is right, as he surmised, no animal is self-conscious, if by this term it is implied that he reflects on life and death and so forth. Now, I find what's fascinating here, the phrase "and so forth," and I'm wondering, I do wonder what thoughts was Darwin sort of edging off the table with this "and so forth," life and death, and so what life and death, and what there might be a choice between life and death, and perhaps death might be preferable to a life locked in a futile and protracted struggle. Perhaps. I think our friendly elephant is on the scene, saying, "You don't go there. Why don't you think about something else?" Because, of course, there evolved eventually an animal that is self-conscious and does reflect on life and death and so forth. And I've no reason to think that this animal would find what is on offer any more appealing than a hypothetical chimpanzee. A futile, heartbreaking struggle. I think they'd reasonably reached the same conclusion. Thanks, but no thanks. And not only can they make that judgment, but they can act upon it. That means this whole struggle for existence business becomes optional. We don't have to do it. We don't have to get involved. We can just walk off the battlefield. I mean, who wants to stay in the ring with Mike Tyson? Quit while you're losing. There is an alternative. And we all know it's there, even though we'd rather not take too close a look. The problem, it seems to me, is that not only do we have the capability to exit the struggle, we have the necessary and sufficient conditions. All of us have the necessary and sufficient conditions to take our own lives. One is pain, and pain is we all are going to experience pain. That comes with the struggle for existence. And the other is the human brain, a brain that is so self-conscious that it conceives of its own mortality and of how to bring that mortality about. Put those two together, and suicide becomes not a deviance, not an abnormality, but the logical result. You see, Pain is designed to motivate escape. The whole point, pain is a biological stimulus, a cue. It's the whole point of pain. It is designed to force the animal to do something to escape the aversive experience. And the human brain provides the cognitive means to effect that escape in the most effective way possible. I mean, it is an outstandingly good, effective solution to pain. Nothing hurts less than being dead. So pain and brain together, if you have the motivation to do something and the means to do it, whatever that something is, then that something is what you're going to do, unless something blocks your path. So suicide is it's not a pathology. It is the default outcome of the human condition. If you equip any animal with a brain like ours, this is what's going to happen. And it's been the case ever since our species acquired sufficient cognitive nous to cognize, to represent, to mentally clock this exit. And we have a living fossil of this transition, this momentous event in our ancestral past. We can see it in the onset of suicide in childhood, during the cognitive maturation of childhood. So the x-axis here, I'll swap brain, which I think is, we can take age as a proxy for cognitive capability. And the y-axis here is suicide rate. This is in America, for America, but you see the same pattern the world over. So suicide is non-existent virtually for the first decade of life. It then rockets up in the second decade, and it plateaus in the third and beyond. And it varies later in it varies in later years, but it never goes back to zero. And that plateau it translates globally at a base rate of 1 in 100 of us will die this way, 1.3%. And what I find curious about this is, why does it plateau? Why is it only 1.3%? Why do 98.7% of us apparently voluntarily choose the struggle for existence? There's something strange going on here. I think the key to understanding this is to understand what's going on at this kink, this sudden onset of suicide. Now, some children get there earlier than others. The more precocious suicide, very young suicides are usually amongst the most precocious children. But we all seem to pass the same threshold. And it seems to me that onset reflects the existence of a cliff edge in an adaptive cliff edge in the fitness function of intelligence. So this graph on the right, fitness is the capability to transfer one's genetic material into future generations, and I've got brain power as the x-axis. And some intelligence is good, and for a social animal like us, more intelligence is better. So the graph ramps upwards, but only to a point. At the point where the ability to realize one's own mortality is reached, the graph suddenly drops to zero. There's a catastrophic point. To be more, this kink that we see in the onset of suicide in childhood is a vestige of this fitness cliff edge. To be more precise, brain power, I'm probably talking about levels of intentionality. There's something about third or fourth tier, degree intentionality, the ability to think about thinking about things, that level of self-consciousness that brings about the suicide problem. And it is a major biological problem. So as adaptive cliff edges generally are. So for example, here is a proto-human population, a pre-human, our ancestors, and they had a spread of intelligence amongst them. Most of them were average and towards the middle of this bell curve, and they spread out into decreasing minorities either side. Some were extremely smart, some were extremely not so smart, forming this classic normal distribution. Now, following the upward curve of the upward graph of the fitness function, what is this population going to do? Well, over an evolutionary time scale, the more intelligent will have a fitness advantage, and the whole population will shift towards the right, until it touches this catastrophic point, and then it stops. And the reason it stops is because of what's going on at the sharp end here. You see, individuals are spread over this distribution randomly, so within the blue area. Some randomly will find themselves close to this, close to this cutoff point, and those that happen, fortunately, to land on the life side of that line, their offspring, if they have any offspring, will contribute to to repopulate the main body of the bell curve. Those that unfortunately land on the wrong side of the death line die, and their genetic material goes with them. So there's this slicing off of the most intelligent going on here, which keeps the whole bell curve a safe distance away from the edge. And this is others have talked about the existence of a grey ceiling in the animal kingdom, grey as in grey matter. Other animals get smart, but nowhere near the level of intentionality that humans do. And I suggest this suicide problem is so severe that it keeps other animals a good distance. The effect of a cliff edge is that the whole population stays a long way back, or some way back from the edge, even though paradoxically that is not the optimum point for most individuals in that population. But for our ancestors, for some reason, the benefit of intelligence was so strong that this population was shoved against the edge, with the result that this Darwinian constructive death process set in. Here we see the evolution of anti-suicide psychological defenses. So variations that allowed individuals that happened to land on the line to survive with that level of intelligence, perhaps just for another day, just for a day. And if they survived for another day, that gives them a substantial competitive advantage. Now we need to think about what these anti-suicide psychological defenses will be. I'm going to have to speed up here because I'm going to talk at 1.5 speeds. Now, I'm setting out here a sketch of what I think evolved anti-suicide defenses will look like. They will leverage these two pain and brain creators of suicide. Pain, on the pain side, some adaptations will aim to make suicide unnecessary by softening the pain, reducing the motivation to take that escape. On the brain type side, they will aim to make suicide difficult. It's just not something we can do by withdrawing access, denying us mental access to the means of lethal self-injury. And I see these defenses developing on multiple tiers. So suicide is so grave a fitness problem that it won't be reliant on just one line of defense. Much like a medieval castle doesn't just have one ring of battlements, it has series of battlements. So there's a front line, and if any attacking force gets past the front line, it's still got the next to deal with. So to keep this simple, I'll just concentrate on what I suspect are the front and the back lines of our defenses against this lethal outcome. By analogy, so a physiological analogy is a better analogy, I think. We can look at the way the body is protected from pathogens. We have complementary but distinct lines of defense. Our front line of defense is the skin. There's a physical barrier, and for any pathogens that manage to get past that, there is a backup, which is the immune system. Now, one is prevention, one is cure, one is continuously active, one is reactive. The immune system only mobilizes when it needs to in emergencies. And the reason for that is that one is cheap, the other is costly. So it doesn't. We can walk around with our skin without too much discomfort. But when the immune system activates, while it's doing its job, it disables the business. Normal business is suspended until while the immune system deals with the crisis. And for this reason, the immune system is reserved for emergencies. Now, what will be the equivalent for our defenses against suicide? Well, I think our frontline defense, much like the skin tries to stop pathogens entering the body in the first place, we will have one set of defenses that try to stop the idea of suicide coming into our heads. That will be so the problem doesn't arise in the first place. The back line, the last resort, will be, if, well, perhaps when the struggle for existence becomes so painful that the idea might start to appeal, then we need reactive defenses that respond to that crisis situation by stopping the idea from being doable. It may be thinkable, but it's not doable. In the books, I call one fenders, the other keepers, which might add to more confusion, but I'll call them front line and last line for the sake of this talk. So that gives us, we've got two columns, front line and last line, and we've got two rows of strategic types of defense, pain type and brain type, which gives us a 2x2 matrix. And we can start to fill in the boxes. What are we going to find in these cells? Well, in the first one, we're going to find adaptations that stop the idea arising. We don't need the suicide idea. What do we want that for? And I see in here a whole set of adaptations that give us an appetite for life. This is a phrase Nick Humphreys uses in there's an excellent article, The Lure of Death. And he points out this is a unique human phenomenon, that we have a positive appetite to do this thing. We have a zest for existence. Where does this come from? I mean, this is not a happy accident. I think this is a strategic outcome, and we see certain components, vital components of this appetite for life. One is that perhaps uniquely, or certainly abnormally for an animal, our emotional state is not neutral. Our resting state is not straight up. It's tilted. We are most of us most of the time are fairly happy. We're not over the moon. We're not ecstatic, but life feels pretty good, and life feels pretty meaningful. We are at a safe distance from despair in that situation. We have a buffer zone, and we're able to take the knocks as they come without too much trouble. Now, this is unusual because elsewhere in the animal kingdom, perceptual equipment, it has to be set straight, because animals aren't interested in what went before. They want to know, they're looking for, they're alert to differences. So perceptions normally discount the average of whatever's gone before. The better to notice when something changes. This doesn't apply to human emotions. We are most of the time in this fairly happy state, and that's costly. It means that we miss information that could otherwise have been useful. But and it is also costly because it's hard work. Much like the way a bird has to work to defy gravity, it's got to keep flapping. Maintaining ourselves in this above neutral affective state is a full-time job, and there's only two ways it can be done. So I can say we can accentuate the positive or eliminate the negative, and I think we do both of these throughout our daily lives. The negative is suppressed by many ways in which we deceive ourselves in self-serving ways, and psychoanalysts will be familiar with the whole panoply of psychological defenses which function to moderate our exposure to psychological pain. We have to accept a certain degree of pain, but we have these mechanisms that titrate, that manage the suffering, and these we all do this: denial, repression. Humor's a good one. Outright evasion, avoidance, and there are many varieties of ways in which we deceive ourselves for this purpose. And on the other side, we accentuate, we keep ourselves in. Oh, I meant to say, let me go back. I disagree with the evolutionists who think that we deceive ourselves in order to deceive others. I don't see that happening at all. You can see the truth about me, even if I can't. We deceive ourselves primarily to keep ourselves in good cheer, whether other people are convinced or not. Usually they're not, but it's for our benefit, not other people's. So on the positive side, we fill our days with doing things, and we fill our days with things and contacts and activities and interests that for any other animal will be a complete waste of resources. Just passions and pursuits and hobbies and just things that we find beautiful, that we bring into our lives for no other reason than they make us happy. So I'm sorry, we all surround ourselves with this stuff. So I can, it's a drinks coaster. I keep this. I don't keep this drinks coaster to impress you. I like the color. I like the theme. There's, why have I keep this? I don't know why I keep this plant. I can't eat it. I mean, I like it, and the cut, it has some sentimental value. But this is a astonishing phenomena of human behavior that needs to be is important to us. And finally, these all these mechanisms are coordinated. They have to be coordinated somehow, and I suggest that they are coordinated by an assumptive framework of some sort that is benign. We believe that fundamentally the world is good. It is a safe place. We don't perceive the world as a struggle for existence, and this isn't necessarily. This is found in some universal features of religion. This triangle of hope, faith, and love that prevail the world over, as far as I can see. Hope that the future is worth hanging in there for, and faith means there's, and this isn't just a religious faith. This is a belief. This is a knowledge that the people are generally good. The future is the world is a good place. Good will prevail, and love is my expression of that faith. And I'm talking about here about love as agape, as the Greek. Compassion, tolerance, charity, forgiveness. These are the way I enact my faith. So they say faith without works is dead, and with suicide on the scene, I'm sure that's true. Dead indeed. And love is faith in action. So the reason I give love, it's not to impress anybody else. It's faith affirming for me. It's my contribution to a world that I would want to live in. And it's just about the only contribution I can make. Now, we put all those together into this package of life appetizers that eliminate the need for, there's what I want to think of suicide for. I'm too busy enjoying life to go there. Now, there's a separate line of defenses that keep the idea at bay on the in the brain domain, and these block specifically the suicide idea. So the idea, these are cultural messages that we pick up in our childhood, that in adolescence at least, that there's a taboo. It's just, you don't want to talk about this. You don't even want to think about it. Many people who attempt suicide, have seriously attempted suicide, forget it. It's just wiped from it's beyond recall. even if it's thinkable, most religious codes around the world would hold that suicide is pointless, because the pain to come in an afterlife could be even worse than what you're suffering now. So leave it. And anyway, even if it wasn't pointless, suicide is inherently wrong. It's just wrong, and society enforces that stigma by punishing. I mean, these are exemplary punishments are meted out to the survivors of suicides. The result of which, the strongest moral argument against suicide is it's cruel for those left behind. So you put all those together, and you don't want to go there. Just why don't you think about something else? That's why we've got this elephant in the room. It's a protective elephant. Now, we've got this column of last line defenses. Now, remember, these are emergency measures. They are equivalent to the immune system. They are costly reactive defenses that will designed to forestall suicides from being enacted amongst people whose lives have become so painful that the escape might begin to appeal. Now, on the pain type defenses of this site, I suggest we'll be using a vast array of taps. And pain is not a given. Pain is constructed by the organism, and it is managed within the organism by all sorts of by a great number of valves and controls that adjust the aversiveness, the felt aversiveness of pain according to the needs of the time. And our defenses, our anti-suicide defenses, I suggest we'll use these compulsively. We'll use these taps and valves to suppress the urge to escape. They will take the form of, for example, a sort of placebo-like generalized numbing, a numbing of emotions, good or bad, which would translate into a loss of interest in virtually all activities, suicidal activities included. Or they could appear as a compulsive self-medication with pain-numbing substances or behaviors. So we can change the way we feel by our actions as well, gambling, sex, and so on. Pain offset relief, I'm sure, is in there. It's possible to soften one pain by applying an unrelated stimulus. This is why you bite your lip when you get cramp. Distraction is no doubt in there, as will be known to any medic that has to take a blood sample from a child, and it helps if there's a reason for the pain. We select reasons to make the pain bearable, which is why athletes can exercise through the pain threshold, and if necessary, in extremis, it may sometimes be necessary just to take a break, to install a different reality altogether. It may be unpleasant, but at least it's habitable for now. And the effect of all these is to pull the plug on the power of psychological pain to motivate escape. Brain type defenses of this at this stage, they will focus on making suicide difficult. Remember, these are emergency interventions. They will block the capacity to act. They will degrade our ability to plan and organize complex tasks such as suicide, and they will attenuate high level capacity for memory, logical thinking, decision making. Now, all these defenses will have some features in common. They will be strongly compulsive. They will be active. They will activate in response to probably chronic psychache, and they won't be permanent states. So they will deactivate in time after the conditions that brought them on will have eased. So there we have our array of evolved psychological defenses against suicide, and it is these that are being constructed at this crunch point, where the population is coming up against this adaptive cliff edge. Oh, but we have to take one thing off the table for the time being. Remember, this population as yet hasn't got the brains to conceive of its own mortality, so it's going to have to cope without ideation blockers for the time being. You see, even if there were intellectual that says thou shalt not commit, it will have no effect if there's a population that doesn't understand what, the prohibition presupposes the community understands what is being banned. So we're going to have to remove that from our table for the time being. But what is left, interestingly, will be primarily genetically propagated defenses. It is these that are being constructed here. And the effect of these is to press the population close to the edge. The adaptations that are being formed are being fed back into the population, allowing a greater proportion of that population to get closer to the danger point, which accelerates the process of building the defenses until the day comes when the population is not immune from suicide, but is so defended that the function line straightens out, the cliff edge disappears. Suicide is not eliminated, but the rate is reduced to a point that is not demographically destabilizing. And at this point, the population, it can leap forward to heights of intelligence that no other that were not possible before. Now, this is us. This is behaviorally modern humans, and we can now we reinstate now that we know what suicide is. We can now install this blocker. Along comes the elephant in the room to complete the array. Now, this population here is what we've got now is categorically different to what came before. We may look anatomically similar, but we are wired in a radically different way. All the old struggles that play out amongst chimps, they still do so at a certain level amongst us to a detectable degree, as the evolutionary psychologists and others have discovered, but they are no longer the primary struggle for us. We have one superordinate challenge, and that is to want to live. It trumps all the others, because unless this is in place, none of the rest of it matters. Now, we are, because of our evolved defenses, we are very well adapted to meet this challenge. That is why the suicide rate is capped, why 98.7% of us do actually choose to stay in the battle zone. We are, as I put it elsewhere, we are adapted to the suicidal niche. We are precisely adapted. In the same way that dolphins are adapted to live in water, we are adapted to live in an environment, in a situation where we are capable of this exit. And it is so hostile a niche, no other animal can get close to it. But all of this, of course, is lost in the fog. I would have to say, if you want a career in evolutionary psychology, I'd focus on the stuff in the blue. I mean, that's but the problem is that, well, it's hard to get to grips with the evolution of life worth living if we prefer to think that we don't need one. So, but the problem is that out of the fog emerge these very specifically human and phenomena that are very difficult to explain. These are fascinating, and these are the human characteristics that are the main focus of other areas of psychology, positive psychology, clinical psychology, social psychology, moral psychology. These are these are really interesting features of our species. The problem is that because their connecting thread is lost in the fog, there is no integrating, there's no way to integrate them. So psychology, I suggest this is why psychology is stuck in a pre-paradigmatic state and has been for 200 years. And I suggest probably will do until we face the elephant, and then we will see that how things fit together. The same applies, I have to say, to psychiatry, which is also in a pre-paradigmatic state and has been for 100 years. And I suggest probably will be until for the same reason. for the same reason, that the connections between the many phenomena that psychiatrists see, the connections are invisible. But they, remember, these are emergency defenses, equivalent to the costly reactive measures that are designed, they're a last resource. They are all that stands between life and death. And we see a lot of these responses playing out in all sorts of psychiatric phenomena. Non-suicidal in self-injury, to me, looks like regular pain offset relief. Addictions is self-medicating. You can medicate with behaviors as well. I suspect the similar dynamics underlie eating disorders, other obsessive and compulsive conditions, or they appear in combinations. There are clusters of combinations that form syndromes. Like depression is a combination of this generalized numbing cognitive deficits. Schizophrenia has very similar elements, but it includes another element of a detachment from reality, the delusions, and the reality may be uncomfortable, but it is at least habitable. It's tolerable. It's a provisionally bearable. In bipolar, the different ingredients take turns. So there's a temporal combination. It's sometimes depressive. Sometimes, I suspect, the manic phase of bipolar has much to do with distraction. So we know all these conditions are connected with the same correlates, similar epidemiology, similar treatments, similar, and they also correlate with suicide risks. But it's never been clear why. Why are all these apparently diverse conditions connected? And I would like to put to you an integrated theory of psychopathology and suicide that focuses on the fact that they have a shared etiology. The pain and brain. Pain is quantitative. It's a quantitative input that I suspect is related to psychache, and it is the P factor. All of us lie on a unidimensional scale of psychiatric vulnerability, basically because some people's lives are more of a struggle than others for many reasons, environmental or genetic or combinations of both. And the brain input is qualitative. It involves the crossing of an ontogenetic threshold, which most of us pass in adolescence. And it's put those together, and there's that sets up a general susceptibility to both suicide risk and to our evolved defenses against suicide. That is why suicide and psychopathology connect. Now, there's how that general susceptibility translates into a final psychiatric presentation, which I would describe as a blend, a personalized blend of pain and brain type responses, anti-suicide reaction responses. And these scale according to the level of the risk. So the greater the risk, the more drastic will be the interventions. And the intervention will be some combination, some cocktail of pain type or brain type, as we've discussed. Now, the causal factors of this final presentation will arise from points of individual difference, but there will be different points of individual difference than the general susceptibility in the grey panel. This will be to do with learned inputs, life history, age, sex, personality traits. So this is why we will have separate causal factors behind that underlie the presentation of specific symptoms, and other factors that underlie the susceptibility to psychopathology in general. And these symptoms cluster into syndromes, the patterns that are familiar in psychiatry, which seem to, I would see as frequently co-occurring combinations of psychache, of anti-suicide responses to that psychache, and various side effects of both. So depression and schizophrenia and bipolar and other syndromic states, they draw on common components, a common menu of ingredients, and they share correlates because they have a shared substrate. My conclusion, I'll leave you with this. My conclusion is that if we to ease each other's mental ill health, to improve each other's well-being, the best we can do is to focus on the singular cause of the problem, psychological pain. None of us want to be involved in a struggle for existence. So how about we do what we can to ease the pain of the struggle? I'll leave it there. Thank you for listening. I shall try and switch off this shared screen now.
Thank you very much, Cas. That was a great presentation summarizing your theory. You're muted, Cas. Can you unmute yourself so we can have conversation? Right. Are you there, Cas?
Yes. Can you hear me? Testing.
Yeah. Can hear you. All right. So I can't see any hands up, but I've got a whole load of questions for you that I'll kick off with, and maybe we'll see some hands in a moment. Now, with regard to the psychic pain, it seems to me that the psychic pain being such a problem in humans is related to our ultrasociality, because that's the source of most of our psychic issues and psychic pains and setbacks and so forth. So when you put forward your ideas with regards to animals, actually the non-social animals don't have those same problems with psychic pains as social animals. And with us being ultra social, we have a compounded problem. So it's not just our intelligence, it's the ultra sociality. These two things might be connected, of course. People have like Dunbar and others have suggested that our intelligence has been related to group size, and that might also be connected with ultrasociality. So what's your comments on that?
I take all that on board, Riyadh. I'm sure you're right, and the social pains that humans experience are probably not categorically different to those that play out amongst chimpanzees, and bonobos. I mean, so other social animals probably experience social pains, but we do to an extreme degree. What sets us apart is having crossed this suicide barrier. It sets up a whole new scale of problems. So, but I take your point, which is basically it's a different level of complexity.
Yeah. Okay. I still can't see any hands. Oh, there's a hand from Adam. Go on, Adam.
Thanks. Thanks, Cas, for a really interesting presentation, and also a very well animated, and I thought it was really engaging and a fascinating insight into your work. So yeah, many thoughts, as Riyadh said. I love the idea of explaining pleasure through this sort of context. It's kind of quite unintuitive, but I'm wondering, I suppose one of the question, or maybe a problem that I see, is you talked about the P factor and how the P factor will kind of be inclining people towards suicide, and therefore the conditions that arise as a result of that are responses to suicide, to kind of prevent suicide. I can totally see that preventing suicide is a consistent necessity for any gene to persist. Any gene that does increase your chance of suicide, it's going to be selected out very quickly. So there has to be this kind of context which prevents that. But I'm wondering why the P factor would also seem to incline us towards just generally negative emotion. I mean, it seems like the P factor kind of leads to a lot of the kind of negative emotions and the thinking about suicide that you kind of imply in the pain and brain theory that there should be more pleasure. So there's this weird match here where if our positive emotions are kind of responses to kind of prevent suicide, then you'd expect the P factor to kind of lead to more positive emotions. But then maybe you're saying that the P factor kind of pushes past those first defenses, and then you have this second wave of defenses, and that's what the psychiatric disorders are about. So yeah, I guess that's one of my main questions. And I guess I'm also a little bit cautious to think that like all of depression and all of schizophrenia and bipolar can be kind of explained by this one thing, which is suicide. I can totally see why suicide would be a factor in all of them. And it's maybe one of the things that they do is prevent suicide, or they can't cause too much suicide, otherwise they'd be selected out. But maybe there's other aspects of them which are kind of adaptive in other ways. But yeah, those are my main comments and thoughts. I'm just interested to hear what you think about that.
Thank you, Adam. Look, this is all work in progress, and this is a tentative proposal. But there may be. It's not easy to separate cause and effect between suicide and mental disorder and the P factor. I mean, it is the P factor may be caused by many things other than one's mental choice, and it is no doubt very complicated. And I don't wish to overstate the simplicity of what I'm proposing here. I think the psychiatric syndromes arise for very complex reasons, and there are interactions between the psychic, the cause of the psychic, the responses to the psychic, the defenses, and this all mixing up together is going to produce a very complex array of outcomes that may defy simplistic formula like. So this isn't an easy fix here, but I think that many psychiatric syndrome, much of the DSM may be at least partially explained by what I'm suggesting here, simply because there are so many intercorrelates between common psychiatric syndromes. There are so many common factors in the course, the correlates, the epidemiologies, that it would be surprising if there wasn't a common thread, a causal thread between them.
Thanks for that, Cas. I actually have a follow-up on the depression issue, but I see that David Geeney has his hand up. David, I'll need to unmute you, or you can unmute yourself. So go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Cas. As I understand it, you seem to be talking about suicide as though it's a behavior, but to my mind, it isn't a behavior, it's an outcome. So, and it seems to me that the behavior is suicidal behavior in general. And with suicidal behavior, the vast majority of suicidal behaviors do not end with suicide. So it would seem to me that one's theory should be conceptualizing suicidal behavior, of which suicide is very much the minority outcome. And other people have suggested, of course, that they're contained within suicidal behavior is something that we see continually in clinical work, which is that suicidal behavior contains an appeal to others. It's a request frequently to others, sometimes even to the world, for the situation to change, for there to be an alteration. And for that sort of an appeal to be effective, it would seem to me it has to contain an element of believability that the person's life is under threat. If there's no threat whatsoever, then the impetus for a response from society is accordingly less. And so it would seem to me that a more parsimonious explanation is that suicide is better regarded as an unfortunate outcome of a behavior that has served us over evolutionary time because it has succeeded in recruiting support from others.
I see that David is propounding the bargaining model for suicide. Cas, what's your response to David's point?
Well, thank you for that. Yes, and there's a long-standing school of opinion that along those lines. Personally, I don't find it helpful. I don't find, in fact, I don't find the word suicidal particularly helpful. Suicidal is an umbrella term that seems to conflate distinct behaviors that arise for completely different reasons and different so most suicidal behavior is paradoxically non-suicidal. It's called non-suicidal self-injury, and it's described it's wrapped up together in this term, suicidality, and it adds to the fog. And no doubt some people use threats of suicide for it has some social utility, but I'm talking here about evolutionary, the evolutionary biological process, and I said because a trait may be used for social purposes doesn't speak to its evolutionary origins. But it's a complicated. It is an involved debate which we can have. We can have elsewhere, but thank you for reminding me of that, for reminding us of that school of thought.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges, David, to your thesis, well, a very strong challenge to your thesis, is the whole population of borderline personality disorders who engage in literally hundreds, if sometimes not thousands, of attempts, so-called suicidal attempts. I mean, it's just not credible that these are really suicidal attempts. You know, they will present with both arms and even the torso covered literally in scars. How many times can you fail to kill yourself? So I mean, I think there are challenges to that, unless you would consider suicide to be an accidental outcome of something else. But let me just put sorry, David, go on.
I would answer that, Riyad, and I would say that you could conceptualize it evolutionarily as being an accidental outcome of that behavior. And as you describe the scenario of the borderline with crisscross lacerations, it seems to me that one can see very plainly the social context in which that occurs, that we as a society in the West, where we have developed a response that if an individual behaves in that way, they're suffering, and therefore our duty is to respond as though they have got some form of illness or disorder. I think there is an argument that we have actively fostered that, because in other societies, as you know, Riyad, where the response of the community is the reverse. It's not to indulge the individual, it's to be horrified by it.
Yes.
And the individual risks being a social outcast. It's a much less prevalent behavior.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, sorry, go on.
That reminds one of the context. But I also, I mean, I still think there is, even if Cas wishes to develop an alternative hypothesis, I still think the argument that suicide is not a behavior, it is an outcome, it is an important one, and that the question for evolutionists is why people engage in that behavior, not the outcome, which can be seen in terms of an inadvertent outcome, which can sometimes become increasingly deliberate, but that in the spectrum of them, it can be seen as an inadvertent outcome more commonly.
Okay. Thanks for that, David. So can I just go back then, Cas, to my point about depression, which Adam started, but I just want to just pursue that specifically just for a moment. Now, I would suggest to you that what happens in depression does challenge your concept of it being a keeper and as an anti-suicide measure or adaptation. We know that depression involves a switching off of the self-deception, what they call depressive realism, where that warm glow actually stops. The warm glow that you argued strongly and convincingly that we have evolved to survive is actually switched off in depression, where depressives become far more realistic, far more accurate, brutally accurate sometimes about their situation, which goes right against your thesis that it's a defense. It actually switches off what you have described as being one of the uniquely human adaptations, which is to feel warmer than neutral, happier than neutral, is switched off. And how can that be an anti-suicide measure?
Thanks, Riyad. I think so. Depressive realism is a real phenomenon, as I understand it, and it will make sense to me if we see depressive symptoms and self-deception as alternative solutions to the same problem. To the same problem of dealing with pain. So the pain is going to have to be faced at some point down the line. It can either be avoided upstream with self-deceptions that avoid us experiencing the pain in the first place, or we can admit the pain and the reality that entails and neutralize the pain further downstream towards the point of suicide with depressive symptoms that allow that pain to be tolerated. So I don't see these as being conflicting solutions. They may be complementary and to a large extent substitutable alternatives, different strategies to the same protective end.
How is it, Cas, that they are complementary when they're actually diametrically opposing each other? The adaptation that keeps us happier than normal, deluding ourselves that the future is great, deluding ourselves that, you know, all of the things that our self-serving biases tell us, these are switched off in depression, where the brutal reality of their miserable existence, the psychic pain that you describe, is actually hits home. So I'm not following you here all that well, maybe.
I'm suggesting there's a trade-off to be made. Life is going to hurt by some means. We have to deal with the pain by some means, and there's a trade-off. Reality is good, but it comes at a cost. It comes at the cost of pain, and the cost of that pain is expressed then in depressive symptoms. So we can't have it. We can't have it both ways, and it's for that reason that I suspect that realism tends to bring depression in its wake, or is associated with that association. I don't see them as conflicting, but alternative routes to the same outcome, different roads to Rome.
Yeah, before I take Adam's question, I mean, it seems to me that when, you know, it is also, I mean, I'm not really sort of on board with your explanation there. It seems to me that if we're arguing strongly that this adaptation of self-serving bias, being warmer than neutral, having this deluded mild optimism about life, which other animals lack, as you described very, very eloquently, that once it's removed, that is a road to suicide, to me. So anyway, I just leave it hanging in the air because we seem to disagree on that. Adam.
Well, I was going to firstly suggest that maybe one way for Cas's account to kind of account for this loss of pleasure in the arising of depression, maybe there's something about our intelligence which just doesn't allow us to feel that kind of baseline pleasure if your life is that bad. You know, I assume that this kind of baseline level of feeling somewhat happy has to kind of reflect on your circumstances, and you know, maybe there's this point at which it really is just impossible to feel positive about your life, and then at that point, then those emotions disappear, and then the depression arises, which then may have some other function of kind of immobilizing you and preventing you from taking depression, but preventing you from taking your life through another means. But I don't know. I mean,
it seems, Adam, that you are kind of agreeing with my thesis. But anyway, I don't know whether, Cas, you want to comment on that, or you've said what you've said your piece on that one.
I'll find a way of expressing myself more clearly next time, but quit while I'm losing, I think.
One other thing I would like to say, just in response to David versus Cas on this behavior issue and the routes towards suicidal behavior, it's entirely possible, and we do see this a lot in evolutionary psychiatry, I think, it's entirely possible that there are multiple accounts accounting for different cases here, and there are some people who are, you know, ending up, you know, having suicidal thoughts, who are kind of really considering their own suffering in the way that Cas implies intelligence does. But there might also be this other set of behaviors which are sort of signaling or bargaining, as kind of Hagen and Syme imply. It's possible for, you know, both things to have adaptive benefits and both functions to exist in different situations, and maybe there are different cases which kind of can be explained by different hypotheses here.
I see that Paul has his hand up. Just a comment, a short comment on what you said, Adam. I mean, we are always amazed by how resilient people are, and this adaptation that Cas has described, which is real. You know, our ability to be deludedly optimistic about our future. You know, people even in concentration camps were optimistic about the next day, and you know that it's our resilience is just defies reason and defies reality. You know, we can delude ourselves, you know, to a degree which is not seen in other animals. Go on, Paul. Go ahead.
Hello, thank you very much, Cas. Very enjoyable, very interesting ideas. Just to go on a little bit further with both David Guiney's, Adam's and Riyad's comments, is I think the behaviours that lead to fatality, let's call it, self-made fatality, the behaviours may have a range of different etiologies, both proximate and ultimate. But actually suicide itself, although suicide is deliberate self, you know, killing, and I think, you know, that fatal deliberate self-harm isn't the same as deliberately killing oneself. I think they are two different things. I think we all agree on that. I don't think that's controversial. People accidentally take 3 tablets of some medicine and die because the medicine's particularly toxic and they don't realize it. But I do think suicide itself, even the end product, which one would think is, a pretty hard, solid marker at the end, is one thing, because it's, dying. That's the end of. But I actually think suicides are very different things. I remember we corresponded, and I sent you a presentation whereby, was Hitler's death suicide in the same way? Is somebody who's very brave in battle and gets killed, and deliberately falls on a hand grenade, is that the same as somebody who can't bear pain? And I think deliberate self-killing has to be teased out quite carefully. So what we're actually talking about is heterogeneity of behavior leading up to self-killing, and actually the self-killing is heterogeneous itself. And it's one of the things that I know Randy and our peer group, we come back to time and time again. Every time we try and nail evolutionary or even proximate pathways, we're bedeviled by heterogeneity of multiple causes and multiple effects. That was just my comment. Do you want to come back to me on that?
I just say thank you for the hi Paul, and thank you for the reminder. It's it's easy to forget the complexity of what is going on here. There are no simple solutions, and I don't pretend to be putting one forward. And I try to squeeze that presentation into 50 minutes, but the reality is going to be a lot messier.
Okay, I don't see any more hands up there. And our audience starting to dwindle. Thank you very much, Cas, for a really excellent presentation. I think anyone listening to your theory and your ideas for the first time would have a lot to think about. I mean, of course, some of us have been reading your work and so forth, but I still enjoyed it immensely. And thank you for that. Again, a last reminder, because this is going to go on YouTube. Anyone who's interested in evolution and psychiatry, we're having our symposium on the 10th of March, and Adam, can you put the link for that on the in the dialogue box or the whatever when you post it on YouTube? And anyone who's interested can register for that conference. And thank you all for attending. And good evening.
I just meant to, I've got to thank you for your kind introduction. That was
You're very welcome.
And very good to see you.
Yeah. Likewise. Cheers. Okay. Good evening, everyone.